You are now listening to Shotgun Sports USA. I'm your host, Justin Barker, and I talk to shotgun shooters from all disciplines, championship-winning coaches, gun clubs, world-class target setters, vendors, and industry-leading companies that fuel the sport. If you're into clay target sports, you are at the right place for insider information from some of the best in the world every single week. Check us out online at shotgunsportsusa.com and like us on Facebook and Instagram. Shotgun Sports USA is powered by Winchester Ammunition, the American legend. Also brought to you by Ultimate Shooting Accessories, Rick Hemingway's Promatic Trap Cells, Sound Gear Phantom, Comp and Choke, Clay Shooter Supply, and Pila Performance Eyewear. Have you seen the blade frame that Pila made exclusively for Clay Target Vision? They had Pila design this because they've always felt that the Outlaws needed a frame that's simple, light, and just works. Clay Target Vision has been selling Pila glasses for 20 years, and they understand the product and can get you into Pilas that work for you. Check out this special. Get a blade frame set with one lens for $389 and free shipping. And you can choose any lens, even the newest lenses for 2022. Place your order at claytargetvision.com. My guest today is a veteran Hollywood star and shooting enthusiast. With more than 100 featured film and television credits, including Godfather Part 3, Criminal Minds, and The Simpsons, he has now taken on the role of host of Gun Stories, the series that takes viewers through a firearm's history from the design through its use on the range. His work has spanned more than 40 years, and he received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame in 2011. Please welcome to the show, Joe Mantegna. I have wanted to bring something a little different to these podcasts. I've tried to get out and talk to people that are involved in sporting clays, shotgun sports, hunting, and firearms in general, and I think my guest this week definitely fits into this category. Joe, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you on. It's something a little different, and I'm sure most everyone listening has heard of you, and if not, I'm sure they have seen some of the movies or TV series that you've appeared in. So for the people that may not have heard of who you are, tell them what you do and how you got into this, and maybe call out a few of your projects that you've worked on or worked with.
Yeah, sure. Well, I've been in the business 50 years now, and I mean, so it's been a long road. I started mostly in the theater. I won't go into my whole background in the theater, but I did do the play Glengarry Glen Ross back in 1984, which I won a Tony Award for, and the show won a Pulitzer Prize, and that really kind of set my career more in motion on a quicker pace. And so during that time, I've done movies like The Godfather 3, done like 3 different Woody Allen pictures. I've done a couple pictures for Barry Levinson. I've done a variety of Baby's Day Out. I've done, it's a whole list of movies. You'd have to really just look on IMDb. In terms of television, my main things I've been doing is I did 13 years on Criminal Minds. I'm still doing the character of Fat Tony on The Simpsons for the last 31 years. I've been doing that. And then more for your particular audience, I've been hosting the show Gun Stories on the Outdoor Channel. This is my 12th season right now. And so that's been a lot of fun. So it's been a very eclectic career. I've been in the television, radio, or television, movies, and theater for going on over 50 years now. Yeah, and happy to be talking to you and talking about primarily Gun Stories, which is a show about the shooting sports and the history of firearms in particular.
Yeah, you didn't mention one that I was a big fan of growing up, and that was the Three Amigos. I don't know. I don't remember you in there, but I know you was in the movie. So
I was Flugelman. I was the guy that owned the studio. At the very beginning, I kind of took all their stuff away, their costumes and stuff, and threw them out. And so Flugelman was one. That one. Airheads was another one I know that's very popular among a lot of people. So it just depends what people's references. But they can just look me up at joemantegna.com and see my whole career and see if it rings a bell with you. Things that people like to watch.
Well, that's a good one for sure. So, Joe, which one of those projects would you say you're most proud of?
Well, that's hard to pinpoint one thing. I mean, I've been blessed with a very long and varied career. I mean, I'm certainly proud of the fact that I was able to work on Broadway and won a Tony Award. Was a real privilege and a wonderful thing. I got to play Dean Martin in the movie The Rat Pack some years ago, and I'm very proud of that only because I had such admiration for him as a singer and performer, and I was nominated for an Emmy and a Golden Globe for that role. So I felt like all the research I did on it kind of paid off, and I really enjoyed doing that. Done various films for the writer David Mamet, films that have done well, like House of Games, a film called Things Change I did with Don Amici some years ago. Godfather 3, I mean, be part of that whole Godfather trilogy has been terrific.
Right.
And the TV stuff I've done, I did a show called Joan of Arcadia, which I was very proud of, which I think was a wonderful show. And I'm on a show right now on Amazon Prime called As We See It. That's about these 3 young adults on the autism spectrum, played by 3 actors who are. And I personally have, my oldest daughter has autism, so this is very personal for me.
Right.
And it's a wonderful, wonderful series that we're waiting to, hear if it's going to be picked up for more episodes. But we did 8 episodes, and I certainly enjoyed that. So I'm just looking forward to the next thing and looking forward to shooting our new season of Gun Stories coming up.
There you go. Let me ask you this question, and I'm sure a lot of people have thought this. As long as you've been in this business, and it's like, just take Criminal Minds, for example. Do you ever find yourself thinking you're the character that you're playing?
Well, if I do, I get smartened up pretty quickly. You know what I mean? Especially with Criminal Minds, you're talking about, where you're playing a member of the FBI and a special unit of the FBI that actually does exist. But I think the moments where I really realize that I don't forget that I'm just an actor is when I often get asked the question, especially with Criminal Minds. They'll say, "Doesn't it freak you out? Isn't it kind of make you kind of woozy to do those episodes because it's so graphic and they're so horrific, some of the scenes and what you have to go through? Doesn't it freak you out?" And my answer always is no, because I know what I'm doing is pretend. I mean, we try to emulate exactly what these FBI agents have to go through who are in that position with this unit of the FBI.
Yeah.
But I never forget for a moment that real men and women do it.
Right.
So for me to say, "Oh yeah, this is kind of weird," and this kind of bugs me, that would be kind of a disservice to them, because at the end of a scene, the director goes cut, and everybody stops, and the guy laying on the floor with an arrow in his head, takes it out of his head and goes and gets a sandwich. That's the pretend world I'm in.
Yeah.
So I have all this admiration for people in the law enforcement, the military, people who it's not pretend for them; they're putting it out there. Yeah. So that's where I have to say that no, I never really forget that I'm just doing hopefully a good job of honoring them by portraying them as honestly as I could. That's all.
Yeah. So where are you from and where do you live now?
Well, I'm from Chicago. I grew up in Chicago and spent many years there. Lived in New York for a while, on and off. But I've been here in Los Angeles in Southern California for quite a while now, for well over 30, going on 40 years now. But my father grew up on a farm in Oklahoma. When his parents came over from Sicily at the turn of the century. My grandfather bought a farm from the Native Americans in Krebs, Oklahoma, which is to this day has signs that say Oklahoma's Little Italy. Yeah. And so my dad was really a farm boy from Oklahoma, and we even did an episode of Gun Stories a few years ago called Guns of the Immigrants, and where I was able to actually go back to the farm, which we still own, this 50-acre farm in Krebs, and I was able to shoot my grandfather's, Winchester shotgun that was handed down to my cousin, who brought it down from Oregon, where he lives, and that was just a wonderful thing. And then my grandfather's actually still buried there in Oklahoma. And his gravestone is there. It's probably about 6 feet tall, and it's all in Italian, the wording on it, and so there's a lot of history there. And my mother's family too came over from Italy as well. They settled in Chicago, so that's why most of my roots are based from Chicago.
Yeah, Dan was telling me that episode really meant a lot to you, about being able to go back.
Oh, I mean, anybody who watches it could see it. I mean, you could almost see me choking up at one point when I first walked up, because it not only was it shooting that episode, but it was the first time I was able to visit my grandfather's grave in the small town of Oklahoma. and it was very meaningful for me, and the experience was just wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, good. How did the career field that you're in kind of transition, if it has, into a show about firearms called Gun Stories?
Well, I would say that the career didn't translate into the Gun Story show as much as me, in the sense that I was into the firearms at a fairly early age, not as a kid, but I guess you could say that my career kind of opened the door for me, because I remember I grown up in an urban environment in Chicago. I really wasn't around a lot of firearms and stuff. My dad was as a kid, like I said, on a farm in Oklahoma. But growing up in the inner city, living in apartments, we never lived in a house growing up. Firearms was not a big thing in my life. But what happened was, I think it was around 1970. Oh, I think it was around 1975. I had to do a play, and in the play there was going to be a lot of gunplay, and so I thought I should really familiarize myself with some firearms here, because there's a lot of gunplay in the show, and I don't want to look like I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So I got together with a guy who was very knowledgeable about firearms, and he took me to a range, and really taught me well about not just shooting, but the care and handling and the respect and everything that goes with good firearms training. And all I could say is that kind of lit a little spark in me, and at least that was in terms of handguns. Now, in terms of shotgun shooting, when I growing up in Chicago at the time, this was back in the 70s, there was this wonderful gun club right on Lake Michigan. It was called the Belmont Avenue Gun Club, and it was these beautiful, it had been built prior to World War II, and it was right on the lake, and people would be shooting trap and skeet right over Lake Michigan, right near a beautiful part of town. And I would ride by there on my bike and watch them shoot, thinking, boy, this really looks like fun. And I remember I'm sitting on my bike, and I must have been about 19 years old, and one of the guys who was getting ready to start shooting looks at me and goes, "Are you going to shoot or what? Are you just going to watch?" I go, "Oh, no, I don't own a shotgun. I've never shot. I just like to watch you guys." He goes, "Well, come on in here. I'll introduce this to you." And it turned out this guy was the president of the gun club. And he saw it in my eyes that I found this fascinating. So he took me to his car. He opened up the trunk. He pulled out, I think it was it might have been something like a Perazzi or something like that, a Beretta. It was a nice shotgun.
Right.
And here I had never shot a shotgun before in my life. Next thing I know, I'm on the line there, and he buys me 2 rounds of skeet and instructs me on how to shoot all during this time. So by the end of that, maybe hour or so that I'm with this gentleman, I'm hooked.
Oh,
He
yeah.
knows it, and so it couldn't have been a better introduction to shotgun shooting. And then he said to me, so I asked him, I said, "Well, look, as you can probably tell, I want to keep doing this. I'm hooked. What should I do next?" He says, "Well, you go buy yourself a shotgun." And he advised me to go get myself a nice Remington 1100. And he says, "Get it with the trap stock, because you'll find that you can get a better line of sight coming down the stock with a trap stock, even though you're shooting skeet." And that's what I did, and I still own that gun. And so I've had that gun for now going on 50 years, and I'm forever grateful to that man. I've got his he has since passed away years ago, but like I said, I couldn't have had a better introduction to the shotgun sports than through this gentleman who was president of the gun club at the time. And the gun club is gone now. I mean, unfortunately, the city shut it down some years later, complaining about possible. I guess they were worried about lead going in the lake or something.
Yeah.
But whatever. But that lit the fire for me. And so I've had an interest in the shooting sports. I started shooting competitively with practical pistol shooting with 45, old model 70, Colt government models 45s back in the late 70s. And so then years later, when Outdoor Channel approached me about possibly doing a show called Gun Stories, I guess they must have read somewhere that I like to, spend my leisure time with shooting sports. I jumped on it and said, "Yeah, let's give this a whirl. Let's see what that's like." And that's been 12 years ago, and I've enjoyed it ever since, and it's been a great thrill.
Yeah. Well, that's the way it normally is when somebody gets hooked like that on any kind of clay target sports. It's just like that first time, it's a bug that bites you, and you can't stop. And
that's right.
You're still doing it.
And I've done it for my wife. I've done it for my daughters, so that they can experience it. Now, again, people are going to embrace it or not as they want, but I think once they're exposed to it, more often than not, they go, "Wow, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. This is pretty cool."
Oh yeah. So have you ever shot on a competitive level as far as skeet or trap or sporting clays?
No, not really. I mean, I'm just proud of the fact that I was able to, I've got a patch that said I did 25 in a row, and that was enough for me. So I don't have to take it seriously after that. Because my feeling was, okay, I did it once, so now I just go out and do it for fun, and what I hit, I hit. I don't have the time or the patience to do the amount of practice you need to do to keep that up, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Because that's how I'm even with my golf game. It's like I don't want to take it too seriously because I might not start to not like it as much.
Yeah.
To me, it's sheer enjoyment. So I still love going out there on the line, whether I'm shooting trap or skeet or sporting clay. To me, it's just a lot of fun, and I've done it various places around the country, and you meet the best people, and it's just a wonderful experience.
I agree.
And so for me, it doesn't matter how good I get at it. I've shot with women. Her name's escaping me right now. I'm sure you know who I'm talking about. When I started shooting her when she was 17, she's won 3 gold medals in trap. At the Olympics.
Yeah.
I'm spacing on her name right now, but she's married with children now.
Is it Kim Rohde?
When I first
Kim Rohde?
Kim Rohde. Exactly. Yeah. That's exactly who I'm referring to.
Yeah.
And I mean, I've known Kim since she was like a teenager.
Right.
And so once you shot with Kim Rohde, you realize, look, who am I kidding?
Yeah.
I'm never going to beat this young girl. So let me just enjoy this for the enjoyment that I get out of it.
Yeah.
It's been great. And I like it. And I did compete in some shooting sports as well, and some practical pistol shooting. But again, I never got up too high. I got, I think, Class C. A pretty good level, but I never went any higher than that because, again, I just couldn't devote the time to it.
What gun clubs have you visited around the country?
Well, let's see. I mean, like I said, I shot for a while there in Chicago. There, I used to shoot out here at Packmeyer where they did the Olympics, when they did the LA Olympics back in '84 out here, out at Packmeyer. Shoot out at Oak Tree Gun Club up here, which is again up in Sylmar, here in Los Angeles. I've done, trying to think of a place. There's a place in Tennessee. There's a place in, something, names escape me, some of these places.
Right.
It's in Nevada, shot there. We still go there, in fact, because we often go to Henderson to shoot episodes of Gun Stories because they've got this one gun club that's right out there. And again, I can't space. I'm spacing on the exact name of the place because I show up. They bring me to these places, and I show up, and there it is. They used to have the Charlton Heston celebrity shoot for many years out at Dana Point out here in California, which was a wonderful event. They did that for 9 years, and I actually hosted their 9th year. And that was a wonderful event that the NRA sponsored. What was great about that, they had pistol, rifle, and shotgun shooting. And it was like a 2-day weekend, and it culminated with a big dinner overlooking the Pacific Ocean at this beautiful kind of resort in Dana Point, which is right on the ocean, on the way to San Diego. So, I've been fortunate to, go to some, but there's tons of, obviously wonderful shotgun places, not just here in the United States, but all over the world.
Yeah.
I long to. Oh, one of the great things was a private range I shot for Midway USA. Yep. Because they sponsor our show, Gun Stories, and so the owner of Midway USA, he has a wonderful range that I was able to shoot, and I was able to shoot his. He's got a set of, he's got sets of everything, but he's got a set of Parazzis, he's got a set of Holland and Holland, he's got sets of some beautiful, he's got a set of shotguns that are probably worth $500,000.
Wow.
That I had the pleasure of shooting a few years ago, so that's been a lot of fun.
So tell me about a Holland and Holland, because I've never touched one.
Well, I mean, like I said, any of these guns at that level, they're just like works of art. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You just can appreciate the craftsmanship, not even just of the firearm themselves, even the cases that they're in. I mean, these are all works of art that are done beautifully. I mean, and if you go down, you go down to the National Firearms Museum, the NRA Museum in Fairfax, Virginia. We've shot there often on Gun Stories.
Right.
They've got a wonderful collection of all kinds of firearms. In fact, I have a gun in there because they have a section called the Guns of Hollywood, and they have the gun that I carried in the show Criminal Minds that Sig Sauer made special for me. That has a Marine insignia on it because I play a former Marine on the show, and it sits in the case there right next to Clint Eastwood's Dirty Harry gun.
Nice.
That he shot in that movie. So that's a wonderful place to see some wonderful shot. But if you ever get to London, you get to England and go visit some of these great, shotgun makers, places, and see which I've done. You can really appreciate it. And same thing in Italy. We've been to Urbino, Italy, the home of Benelli, and to see some of the shotguns that are being made there. More like semi-autos, but beautifully done. And I met their head gunsmith Marco, who's a guy who made some of the more cutting edge kind of, which has made the Benelli arguably one of the best semi-automatic shotguns in the world right now. And it's due to his expertise, So that's been a lot of fun.
What shotguns do you currently have?
Yeah, I shoot. I've got a variety of things. I favor these Berettas because they were kind of like I said, that first one is that it will always be important to me, that Remington 1100 with the trap stock.
Right.
I've still got that one. But then I got into over and unders, and I picked up a couple Berettas. I got a sport model, and then I've got I can't remember what the designation is for the other one, but two different forms of Beretta that I really enjoy shooting.
Yeah.
I've got a Browning that I use for trap. I've got I almost hate to admit it, but among us gun people, they understand when they say, "Oh, I can't quite remember all the stuff I've got."
Yeah.
But that's the case. I've got a good variety of different shotguns of different calibers. Even Charles Daly, I remember I knew at the time the man who was president of Charles Daly, and he made a special 16 gauge for one of my daughters, which was great. And then I got an Ithaca. I got a Weatherby somewhere in there. I've got all kinds of different shotguns.
Right.
And I enjoy them all for different reasons and different applications.
Are you interested in a discount on guns, ammunition, and nearly every other accessory you can think of? Well, go to clayshootersupply.com and use the code ShotgunSports at checkout to save 5% on everything. How would you like to save $100 on a set of Sound Gear Phantoms, the only custom Bluetooth hearing protection on the market? Here's how. Go to ultimateshootingaccessories.com. Add them to the cart and use the code SGBarker at checkout. So we've mentioned this show, Gun Stories, a few times so far. Tell me about the show, what it's about, and where to watch it if somebody wants to look at it.
Yeah, well, Gun Stories, like I said, I've been doing it for 12 years now. It's on the Outdoor Channel. We usually are on Wednesday nights, but then they run reruns all constantly. I'm not even know what cycle they're on now, but you can find it. Just look up the Outdoor Channel, look up Gun Stories. But what we do on the show is we trace historical firearms and the history of firearms in how it fits into the history of the planet in a way, that's what I find fascinating about it. Because when you think about it, the history of firearms really is the history of the world, because almost every single country and every single civilization has had some sort of firearm that is part of their history. So on our show, we've gone back as far as like when the Chinese were first fooling around with gunpowder, back as far as you can remember, to the cutting edge stuff they're using today in today's modern military. So I get to shoot all this stuff. So we've done episodes like the guns of General Custer, the guns of the Confederacy, the guns of the Russians in World War II, the guns of the Indians that fought against General Custer. And you just name it, whatever different kind of variety of kind of firearm you could think of, we've done it. Bullpups, there'll be an episode just on the bullpups, and I'll shout out a different variety of those. Or we may pick out a specific gun that has some, like the Colt, obviously the government Model 45, that has such a history. We can devote, obviously, a whole episode just to that. Or we'll do special episodes, as I mentioned. Like this past season, we did a wonderful episode that's coming out, or this coming season. It's called the Guns of the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier. because Sig Sauer went and built these 4 pistols specifically to be carried by the honor guard that guards the tomb of the unknown soldier at Arlington. And it's a wonderful episode because the gunsmith, his name was Tim Butler at the time, who was head gunsmith at Sig Sauer. They put so much effort and time and extensive labor into the creation of these guns, to where they did things like using the granite powder from the tomb, taking ground up a little piece of slab from the tomb and incorporated that into the site, using wood from the boat that delivered the first unknown soldier to the site back in like 1930 or something. They used the wood to make the grips. There's engravings done on the inside of the gun on the firing pin, this, that, So that's what I mean. We'll take an episode and really devote it to, certain things, whether it's one firearm or whether it's the history of a whole branch of firearm. Like we'll do maybe an episode on the German Luger, of World War II or something like that. So I would just advise anybody who has an interest, just look up episodes of Gun Stories and see the titles of the shows, and you'll get an idea. But we cover the waterfront. We cover lots of different firearms from all eras, from all manufacturers, from all countries, and it's fascinating. And we interview wonderful people on the show as well that have a connection to this. Some of them are experts. Some are just people who had an interest in it. Some are even celebrities who had a connection to a particular firearm. We did the guns of Elvis Presley. We did an episode.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you find out what show you want to do, say you're going to do the guns of Elvis Presley, how do you acquire these guns?
Well, there's a whole lot of pre-production that goes into it. A lot of, we would contact the people we need to contact. We have people we find out who we would, be able to might have some inroads to that. I mean, I actually know Priscilla Presley myself, so that I think that helped us make a connection there. We were able to shoot some of that episode, I remember, in Indiana, because they had a car there. There was something, I think it was a car that Elvis at one time owned or something. Mm-hmm. And so it just depends. Or I remember at the National Firearms Museum, the director of the museum at one time, he collected certain kinds of guns, and he happened to have a Sammy Davis Jr.'s 45s. He had 45 long Colt 45s that he used to use because he used to compete with kind of like in that kind of cowboy shooting and quick draw kind of events. This is Sammy Davis Jr., the performer. Yeah. And so this gentleman, owned this gun that had this beautiful leather work on the leather, with Sammy's name on it and stuff like that. So sometimes we just come across things, or somebody will suggest something, and we'll travel to different museums around the country. There's a wonderful one in Oklahoma. Again, I can't space on the name of it, but they had some wonderful kind of specific guns there that we were able to kind of then, okay, well, let's tell a story about this. We even did an episode just dealt with air guns and their place in firearms, because you go back to Lewis and Clark and stuff like that. Some of them were shooting these air rifles that were powerful enough to hunt with, because they were huge and they had big bore, and it took a lot of manpower to get enough air in them to you better not miss, because it's like often was one shot and you're done. But that was fascinating in itself.
Yeah. What is the call out a couple of guns that you've shot that you just can't forget? Give me a couple of those.
Well, okay. Yeah, I think I could do that. Well, one, I tell you, but we did an episode it may have already been out, or it's coming out, on Bond Arms. And Bond Arms, Gordon Bond, who's president of the company now, they decided to take the Derringer, which was, had this whole history of being this tiny little gun and riverboat gamblers would carry, and stuff like that, and really take it to its extreme. So Bond Arms makes a variety of Derringers that are really just remarkable, because, what's memorable about it is I shot, they make one that shoots, 357 Magnum. Now, once you shot a 357 Magnum out of a Derringer, you've now understood what felt recoil is.
Right.
But the fact that they made this gun, and it's well made, and it's a beautiful piece, and it can handle that kind of pressure, And
Yeah.
that kind of, I think they even might make one up at the 44 Magnum. I'm not sure. But that I'll never forget. There's a gun that French paratroopers carried in World War II. Again, can't remember what the name of it is. If someone could look it up. But what's amazing about it is the thing folds up into like the size of maybe like like a shoebox,
Hmm.
perfectly square, because the paratrooper would carry it on top of his parachute pack on the front as he jumped out of the plane. So that when he landed, it was almost like putting together a puzzle. You take this piece of, it would look like a square piece of metal, like a shoebox, but now you press these different buttons. And it took me about a half an hour to learn how to do it for the episode. Somebody had to teach me. Where it unfolds, and next thing you know, you're carrying this small little 9mm submachine gun, but it all folds up intricately into this little kind of a puzzle. So see, I'll never forget that because it was so interesting. And I've shot an elephant gun. You shoot something with an elephant gun, and that's another time when you're going to always remember felt recoil, because sometimes they say often they have in the old days they would have one of the guides standing behind the guy holding his back because the recoil is going to push you back so
Wow.
much. So there's all of that. I've shot some really interesting stuff over the years.
The fold-up paratrooper gun. How accurate was that gun?
Well, not very accurate. It didn't have to be though. You figure if when you're using that in combat, all you had to worry about was setting down some rounds in front of you to the enemy they're close enough that you're having to encounter them at fairly close range. So there's no aiming that thing. That thing is, you're almost pretty much shooting that from the hip, and just it's mainly for self-defense if anything. But it's a pretty remarkable piece. I have to say that.
Have you shot the modern automatic rifles?
I've shot some pretty modern, this past year, one thing I shot is called a Heli Gun. This is the gun that, there's the thing called the minigun, which the minigun is the thing that they carried on I think they might have first started using them in Vietnam. These are they're like Gatling guns,
Yeah.
electronic Gatling guns that they mounted on those attack helicopters. And they shoot like something like 1,200 rounds a minute.
Wow.
And they're called a minigun. Now, Howard Hughes decided when that came out, and he was always a tinkerer, he decided, you know what, I think I can improve upon that. And he came out with this thing called a Heli Gun, which was on a whole different principle. It didn't have that whole multiple barrels operating like a Gatling gun. It had a whole different principle, but it actually had a higher, in a way, rate of fire. But we profiled it in the show. The problem, it never became the military never adapted it because they just couldn't really get them to work consistently, well. And we had a lot of even trouble with it, I remember, in the episode. So, it just didn't have the reliability it needed. But it was fascinating to see that somebody took the time, effort, and wherewithal to try to come up with this gun that would have such an incredible high rate of fire, and to be able to use it in combat situations. And had it worked, it might have been somewhat revolutionary.
Yeah.
And it's a different application for airplanes and tanks and whatever they would use it for.
We need to do us a story on sporting clay shotguns. That's what we need to do.
Well, I love sporting clay. Yeah, I've enjoyed it. We always explain it as it's golfing with a shotgun.
Mm-hmm.
You're going all these different stations. You never know what's going to be popping out. If it's going to be a thing running along the ground or something going away from you or something coming in close. One good sporting clay story I would have is it was a charity event out in Vegas some years ago, but it was being sponsored by John Elway and Dan Marino. And the third one was a baseball pitcher from the New York Yankees. I'm spacing on his name now. But all three of these athletes had a sporting clay event that they threw in outside Las Vegas. And that was great because here you are and in a wonderful environment shooting with because they were all shooters. John Elway was a big shotgun shooter, and I think Dan Marino was as well. These two Hall of Fame football players.
Right.
So for me, that was a wonderful event to be a part of. To be able to shoot with those guys and be at that event. And sporting clay is such a great family kind of a sport too. That's what I like about it. because you with a little instruction, you can be a kid, or you can be somebody. I used to shoot with Robert Stack. I mean, somebody might have to be old enough to remember who he is, but the old Untouchables television series from years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it was in black and white. Robert Stack was a world-class shotgun shooter. He taught guys during World War II. He instructed gunners aboard ships who were using those ECAC guns, that would shoot down airplanes. Instruction on the right way to lead airplanes, because it was the same principle he used, because he shot in the Olympics as a skeet and trap shooter.
Wow.
So he was that good. In fact, he had a book on shotgun shooting that to this day I cherish, and he autographed for me about shotgun shooting. So here's a guy from my world, from show business, an actor, but yet was a world-class shotgun shooter.
Wow.
So being able to shoot with Robert, which I was able to do some years ago before he passed away, was a real privilege, because not only was he an accomplished, TV star, but he was a world-class shotgun shooter.
Yeah. What other hobbies do you have when you're not working or shooting, Joe?
Well, I like the occasional game of golf, only because I do like the outdoors and I like being out on the golf course and stuff. I've done very little hunting, only because I didn't grow up with it. I mean, like I said, growing up in Chicago in a real urban environment, it wasn't part of my thing. But my father had done it as a kid, and then I got exposed to it through show business, because remember the show American Sportsman.
Mm-hmm.
They took me out on a pheasant hunt once, and I really enjoyed it, because I was very active at that time doing a lot of sporting clay. So to me, it was almost like shooting sporting clays, but with stuff that had wings.
Right.
And, was a lot it was a lot heavier.
Right.
But being out there with the dogs and doing it, I really enjoyed it. But again, I just don't have the time or the ability to kind of pursue it at such a level. Because first of all, I live in Los Angeles. It's not that easy to find places to go pheasant hunting out here. But that's fine. But my main thing is I have such respect for the shooting sports and for hunters, in the sense that when it's done at the level that it should, be done at. That's what sometimes people forget. People think, I always will get into, I'm always would be willing to get into conversations with people who think that, hunters must hate animals, or that whole Bambi thing of like, well, if you're a hunter, that means you're an animal hater.
Right.
And I always do my best to try to convince people or make them understand that in as long as it's all done properly, it's the exact opposite. That you're hunting community, these are the people who love animals the most. And that's why you have places like, Ducks Unlimited and Quail Unlimited and Deer Unlimited, or wherever it may be. They're looking to provide that habitats so that we never lose things like the wetlands and places for these animals to live. And their thing is to propagate the species, not to eliminate it by building, condominiums and other things that are going to destroy their environment.
Yeah.
When hunting is done, properly in a way, in the spirit of the hunt, no, these are your naturalists. These are the people that care more about animals than the people who are out there saying, oh yeah, we want to save all the deer. My best story that I give for an example, and this is what kind of spun me around. I remember years and years ago, there was some flooding in the Everglades. And the Everglades have a specific breed of deer, these small deer that live in the Everglades. And I remember that particular year, and I'm going back to at least the 70s now, that because of the flooding, they figured about 1,000 of these deer were going to die from starvation.
Mm-hmm.
So the people in Florida decided to come up with a plan. They said, here's what we'll do. Let's issue like 1,000 special hunting licenses for people to go hunt these deer, with the money that we'll get from these licenses, which was going to amount to a lot of money. We're talking maybe up near maybe $1 million. Use that to propagate the species, the habitat, whatever, so that we can build the species back, and those 1,000 deer were going to die anyway from starvation. This way, everybody wins. The deer, they're going to donate the deer to some of the poor population for meat. Everybody wins under that circumstance.
Right.
There was this whole other group of people who loved the animal group, whoever it was at the time, said they got a court injunction to stop it because their plan was we're going to rent helicopters and we're going to save these deer and not let these hunters kill them. So they were able to get and they kept saying, you can't wait too long on this for this injunction because the deer are going to starve. But they held up the thing. They held up the ability to get these licenses out for that to happen. They got the injunction for whatever long enough for them to try to do this thing with the helicopters. Well, it was totally unrealistic. They saved something like 3 deer, were able to kind of get them out, and something like 997 deer died of starvation. Nobody made any money off of it. There was no funding then to help, make this any better so this wouldn't happen again. So things like that made me realize it isn't, it's not, you got to look at the whole issue. Don't think that just because a guy's out there with his shotgun or his rifle or whatever to shoot an animal, that he's this monster who's doing something bad for nature and for a population of animals. And so even as a non-hunter, which I am only because I'm not a hunter, and that's just I'd rather like be shooting clay because that's what I grew up with. But I have I have total respect for those who do it and for it as being the thing that it is.
Yep. It's done for a good reason for sure. So what other projects are you working on? Do you have coming up in the future, Joe?
Well, I got, we're waiting to hear, Criminal Minds may be coming back. Well, there's some talk of bringing it back on a streaming version on Paramount Plus, which is like CBS's streaming version of their network. We were always connected with ABC as well, so they'll probably be involved, our show. So if that happens, Criminal Minds may come back. As I said, the show I did As We See It is on right now. You can find it on Amazon Prime. It's a wonderful, wonderful series that I'm very proud to be part of. And again, look forward to the next season of Gun Stories, which the episodes are being written right now. We'll start shooting them in, I believe we start sometime, if not April, certainly by May. We're starting shooting the new season of that, and I'm looking forward to that. And then I never know. After that, who knows? Like I said, it's too late for me to change deck chairs here. I mean, this is what I do for a living. So we'll see, what's up, what's next up there.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I've wondered this. How long does it take you to shoot an episode of Criminal Minds?
Criminal Minds, when we did them, it usually took us 8 days.
Wow.
That was kind of the standard. In other words, 8 shooting days. And I directed 9 of those episodes, so I'm well aware of the time frame and how to use that time effectively. So in other words, and so you have to look at this way, we're shooting 44 minutes because you got to allow for commercials and all that. Mm-hmm. So to shoot 44 minutes, you need about 8 days. So what is that? Comes to about 5 minutes, a little 5 to 6 minutes worth of episode per day is what it amounts to.
That is
But
crazy.
You're talking about a lot of pre-production that goes into place, scouting locations, building the sets, costumes, makeup, casting, all of that. So it's quite an involved thing. And you're talking the funding, maybe each episode probably costs somewhere, maybe a little north or south of $3 million. So it's a major deal, each episode.
Wow. That is amazing. I had no idea that. I just figured it'd take you, about 6 or 7 hours, you'd be done with an episode. I didn't know it took 8 days.
Oh, no.
Wow.
No. 6 or 7 hours, because you got to look at it you can devote a whole day just at one location. If in the episode we're supposed to be like, let's say in a cave somewhere, well, we have to, by the time you get the crew there, set up this, that, even though that might be 5 minutes of the episode, we have to spend that whole day out there where that cave is located. You can't just pack it all up and move it somewhere else like immediately.
Yeah.
So no, they get it down. The writers understand that there's certain limitations you got to fit, and so that 8 days is, and some shows take longer.
Wow.
Just depending on how complex they are.
Joe, I don't know if there's anything else you want to touch on.
No, I think that's it. I'm just happy to have an opportunity. As you can imagine, I do most of my publicity for the regular kind of outlets out there where people are interested in the show business end of what I do. So it's nice to be able to talk to an audience of people who also have an interest in the shooting sports as I do. So I think we've covered it pretty well. And I just encourage people to just if you do have an interest in any of those things we talked about, you can go online and find out where they are, how to get them. As I said, Gun Stories is available on the Outdoor Channel, and we'll be shooting a new season coming up. And thanks for your interest. That's all I can say.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you coming on, and good luck in the future. And if you're ever on the East Coast shooting some gun story shows, let me know where they're at. I'd like to come see that. So,
you got it. Where are you located, Justin?
Georgia, right here in Georgia.
Georgia. Oh, okay. Well, there's a chance that, you know what? It's funny you mentioned it. There is a chance it might be coming out that way. So if that happens, I'll let you know.
Yeah,
right.
Do that. Thank you, Joe, and appreciate your time, man.
You're welcome. You take care now.
All right, you too. See ya.
Bye-bye.